Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and it is time to finish, at long last, the Estes Sasha. It's a long time coming, there was a lot of stuff to do, and a lot of it was fairly time consuming. Real life time, not of actual build time. So, let's power through. Now, in the intervening time, let's see, I ended up putting 3 coats of brushed on red paint onto these end tips. So that was time consuming. And then all this got a clear coat with the decals to make sure that they were nice and protected. So everything is ready to go. I'm going to start with the first stage here. There's a little bit of work to do with this. Let's get everything else out of the way. There is a decorative engine bell here, and that's going to go right down here, like so. There we go. So, typically I would put, I'm going to use crazy glue, well, CA glue, this stuff, and typically I would put the glue on the cardboard, but I'm not going to do that this time because it's pretty small area to work with, and I'd rather not dribble it all over the place. So I'm actually going to apply just a little bit to the plastic itself. Doing this runs the risk of squirting some out the side, which I'd rather not do, of course. And there's also the risk that I won't get it quite in place before it starts to set. So hopefully that won't come up. One quick move and boom, it's in place. And a little bit of glue, the tiniest bit squirted out on that one side, but otherwise it looks pretty good. Just don't dab that with your hands. It's crazy glue, it's CA glue, it's going to stick to you very, very rapidly, so don't do that. Alright, first stage is done. When you go to fly this, there are 2 of these spacers in here. This is what you need to put in if you're going to use anything other than a 24mm E motor. So I'm just going to pop that in right now. It just goes in there and it stays there. So that's great. When you put this together, do make sure that the fit of this part, the red part, is not stiff. If it is really hard to get the 2 stages together, then you need to sand this and probably the inside of the second stage as well. This is, you want a nice friction fit, but not that much. Alright, so if this is really sticky, then it's not going to come off when the stages separate. You don't want that. Alright, so this is done. Put that out of the way. And now it's time to work on the top stage. I have the CA glue out still because I need it. There's actually a motor, an engine retainer, which is kind of a nice bit for this stage as well. Typically, if you're building a 2-stage rocket, you don't get that because the 2 parts are going to be, the motors are going to be taped together and there's no real room. So that's going to go on like this. I think I'm going to again put glue on the interior of this. I wouldn't usually, but again, it's going to be hard to get the glue in there. The instructions call for you to, what's it call for? Does it call for epoxy? Plastic cement. Well, I would never trust plastic cement to do this job because you're not bonding plastic to plastic. Plastic cement's great for that, but it's not great for bonding plastic to pretty much anything else. At least the stuff I use. So I'm going to put a little bit on here, and I'm going to go very light on this because I really do not want this stuff squirting out, because that would make it unlikely that I would be able to get motors in properly. Alright, so that's going to go on just like this, push it down, and that is taken care of. Alright, so that kind of gluing is done. The last bits I need to do are to take care of the recovery system. So, and this gets screwed on, but I'm going to do that right now because if I got CA glue anywhere where it shouldn't be, I really do not want this to become a permanent fixture. That would be bad. So that's just going to sit over there for a while, and then when I put everything back together, I will end up putting it on. Oh, before we move on, so the interior to this now, where I put the retention one part of the retainer. I'm going to just stick a paper towel in here quickly, and hopefully there's no glue that got squeezed out, but if there is, I'm going to try to mop that up now. But I don't feel anything there. I probably will get my sandpaper out and just sand the interior of this, because honestly it doesn't feel all that smooth. You could, if you want, I have a bunch of these spacers for 24 millimeters. You might want to check to see how well it slides in there. This actually fits pretty nicely. In my experience, the junction point between these motor mounts, sometimes the glue squirts out, or who knows what else ends up happening. And this gets rough and the motors don't fit in smoothly. So something to be aware of. Alright, anyway, retention systems. We'll put that off to the side for the moment. We have a parachute here, we'll deal with that shortly. What I do need though is I need the elastic band, that is the shock cord, and I'm going to need the nose cone. The nose cone actually looks a little dirty. I've had this painted for a while, and I think it just got a little dirty from being on my bench, my workbench. There are a couple like water spots, so good enough. There we go. Anyway, going back to the instructions then, this is the last thing I really need the instructions for. I need to cut out the good old-fashioned Estes, let's get this out of the way, template for the shock cord mount. If you've built an Estes rocket before, you almost certainly have done this step. This is like the one thing that doesn't really change from rocket to rocket. Motor mounts are pretty similar. You know, there are a few other things that are pretty similar, attaching the fins and all that, but this part is practically the same every single time. Alright, so away that goes. And now I need my wood glue, which is hiding behind the rocket. There we go. Alright, so how do we do this? Done it before, it's exactly the same. Put some glue in the number 2 section. You don't need all that much, that was probably a little more than I wanted. And then, ooh, shock cord's very tangled. And it tied itself in a knot. We don't want that. Alright, there we go. Now I this down right up to one line, and I want it nice and centered, and then I'm going to fold it over to the other dotted line, squeeze it flat. Remember, the flatter the better here, because this needs to go inside the tube, and you know, things interior to the rocket, you don't want them to get stuck on this when they're supposed to be coming out nice and smoothly, so as flat as possible. This is actually, you know, if you end up putting too much glue in here, that would be a reason why it would end up not lying flat. I'll squeeze that nice and flat against the ground, or my mat in this case. Alright, that's good. Okay, I got a little bit of glue on my fingers. I want to make sure that I'm just going to kind of like rub them together to get the glue off. I don't want to get any, or have any glue on my hands when I'm messing around with a nice finished rocket. I don't need any glue on the outside of it. Last step then here is put a little bit more glue on one side. Bring this up here so it doesn't flop over. And then I'm going to put this inside the rocket tube, and I'm going to push it down as far as I can comfortably reach inside the tube with my finger, and then I'm pushing it flat and pushing it down against the rocket body tube. Again, I want it as flat as possible and as far in as possible. At the bare minimum, okay, it needs to be deep enough so that the shoulder bit here of the nose cone fits, so it needs to be a little over an inch, I would guess. My index finger is easily twice that long, so that shouldn't be a problem. Alright, let's actually move this out of the way a little bit. So 2 final things that I need to do. One is deal with that. We'll deal with that momentarily. but I'm going to get the parachute all prepped and ready to go. As per usual, I am going to use a fishing barrel swivel here to allow the parachute to spin kind of freely. I mean, it's not, sadly, it's not magic, you know, it's not perfect, or at least these aren't. Maybe there are some barrel swivels out there that are truly fantastic and never themselves get tangled up, but this does, at least, if nothing else, it allows you to swap the parachute out quickly and easily. Alright, so I've got the parachute all flattened out. I have the shroud lines gathered up, mostly. Let's close the glue before I forget about it. And there's the barrel swivel. Alright, so I'm going to gather up the threads. And I'm going to try to keep them from crossing each other as much as I can. And I'm just going to gather them together and pinch them so that they are pretty narrow. I need to thread it through the eyelet here, like so. There we go. I'm going to then reopen the loop and then just push the barrel swivel through and then pull everything nice. And one of them is not tight. And I'll just keep pulling until I get it. There we go, there's that one. Last one, of course. Alright, so that's all taken care of. I'm not going to fully pack this right now because the interior of the rocket might have a little bit of glue floating around. I don't need that. Alright, so the clasp, the clasp is pretty well stuck in here. There we go. Alright, clasps open. It's going to go right in here. Remember, we cut that open a while ago. And then this is a really stiff swivel here. Try it this way. Almost. I got it this time. There we go. Alright. It's actually probably a good thing that I was that stiff. Doesn't hurt. And then last but not least, the shock cord needs to go through here as well. And then just knot it a few times. The more the better. I try to go with at least 3. Yeah, I've got enough for 4. So let's do 4. There we go. Now if you want, you could cut the excess off, but it's probably not hurting anything. Well, I got the scissors here. I might as well just snip it. That is a decent amount of excess. There we go. Okay. All right. That should wrap things up. I'm going to pack this together, obviously, for storage, but I want glue to set. The CA glue is probably dry now. I'm sure I could screw the engine retainer on, but no rush on that. That wraps things up. So that was a lengthy build, but a fun one, and I'm pretty pleased with the way things ended up looking. The only thing that looks a little sketchy, I think, here is the red tips on the posts. But yeah, you really would not want to spray paint them, I'm thinking, unless you're a master spray painter, which I am absolutely not. Otherwise, pretty pleased. Looks good. Am I ever going to fly at 2 stages? Maybe. I don't know. It's going to go pretty high on 2 stages, so that'll have to be a really calm day on a really big field. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in whatever happens to come next. See you then.